I am so looking forward to delivering this episode. This is something I've been sitting on for months, honestly, and this I hope will be really, really good. So if you've ever looked at big shows, in particular like the London International, and thought, should I do that? Would that be any good for my business or would it finish me off? This episode is for you because instead of guessing, I asked the people who actually exhibited in 2025, and I want to share what some of them said. And it might surprise you because it certainly did me. So, you ready? Let's jump in.
You're listening to the Equine Business Podcast. Practical business support for equine business owners. With Jenni Bush, the Equine Business Mentor.
So, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jenni and I help equine business owners to make some clearer decisions about marketing money and where the energy actually goes in their business. So, today we are sharing the feedback from real exhibitors at the London International Horse Show. Now, last week, I shared the interview that I did with Tarzan Hughes at the London International, where we actually chatted how he was finding it and about the strategies behind his stand and everything else. Now, I haven't actually exhibited there myself. I have done big shows. I have done big wedding shows as well in my previous business. And I do the National Equine Show, and I will be at the National Equine Show in February and March very soon. What I did do is I've visited the London International Horse Show many, many times. And this year I decided I'm going to ask the people who actually were there what it was really like. So after the London International, I went through the full exhibitor list, like you can imagine, cicadas, and I messaged personally every single one of them. And I asked them if they'd carry out my short anonymous survey. So they didn't have to give me their names unless they chose to. There was no agenda. There was no selling. There was nothing else. I said it would just take a couple of minutes. Would they spare me a few minutes just to help me to understand so that I can help you guys? So now out of all the exhibitors, 20 responded, which was okay. Would have liked more, but it is just what it is. I understand that everybody's busy. Now, this was not a massive scientific study, but it's just a current snapshot of real businesses, real money, real energy levels, particularly after the show. So this was taken like straight away after the show. And because it was totally anonymous, it allowed people to be truly honest. So this is quite good data that I wanted to share with you. So who responded? Out of those 20 businesses, 55% were product-based, 20% was service-based, and 25% were both product and services. So it gives you a bit of a broad view, so that a lot were doing services as well as products. So if you're thinking, well, I'm service-based, like this doesn't apply, it does. These were across the board. And of that group that was surveyed, 60% of them were first-time exhibitors at the London International Horse Show. 40% had done it before. So this isn't just seasoned pros talking. A lot of these people were actually doing it for the first time and working out things as they went and how it went. So I asked them, why did they actually do the show? So when I asked them what their main goal was, the top three goals were 70% wanted to make sales on the stand itself. 70% were about getting brand awareness. 70% were about getting brand awareness and visibility. And 35% wanted to generate leads and inquiries. So very few people said that networking was their main reason. Most were hoping for either money now or traction later. And so that matters when we look at how they felt after the show, because you must have a goal when you're doing all these things. If you don't have any goal in mind, it's going to massively pay off. And of course, if you're trying to make sales on the stand, that means often these shows are massively expensive. We're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands. So it's about how do we get to a point where actually you make that money back. So I asked them, did it meet expectations? And this is where it got really interesting. So when asked how the London International performed against their goals, 25 said they actually smashed it. 35 said that they met it. 35% said that they met it. 25% said close, but not quite. 10% said missed it. And only 5% said too early to tell. So actually over 50% said they smashed it or met it. And I thought that was really, really good. So while plenty of people did well, nearly 40% said that they didn't fully get what they hoped for, but that could have been that they had hoped for massive results. And sometimes we go out to these things with unrealistic. And so often we go out to these things with unrealistic expectations, but it doesn't mean that it's a failure. And it doesn't mean that actually it didn't work. It means that expectations do matter. So when sales and inquiries, like for product-based businesses on site, so I asked them like specifically about sales and inquiries. So for the product-based businesses, on-site sales were The results were as follows. So 12.5% said that it was better than they expected. 31% said that their sales and their inquiries were about expected. And half of them, 50%, said that it was lower than expected. 6% said that it was poor. So half of the product sellers made less than they expected on the stand. Now, that does not surprise me. Does not surprise me at all. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? But in saying that, for product based sellers, I went to the London International Show this year and I spent far too much. I don't tell you how much I spent, but I spent a lot of money. So it's not that people weren't spending money. It could have been a whole lot of reasons why they didn't make the sales that they wanted to. So when I looked at service-based businesses and about their sales and inquiries, it was a different picture. Now, 44% said it was better than expected. 33% said it was about expected. Only 11% said that it was lower than they expected, and 11% said poor. So services genuinely came away happier than product sellers. And that's not good or bad, but it's useful data to know. And as I said, I think there are some strategies that we can put in place to make sure that if you are product based, if you are service based, that you are getting those responses and inquiries and you are getting your money back. And I think sometimes it comes down to the strategy and who is on the stand. And like, I don't know if you've ever walked around a trade show, I have, where people have just been not very, what's the word? Yeah, if you've ever walked around, there are some trade shows. I remember one specific, London International. I walked around, and there were some people that were sitting at the back of their stands, looking down at their computers like this, did not even acknowledge you, not even said hello, not even asked you if you're looking for anything in particular. So, like when I think about what I bought at the show, I bought I bought bread knives, which is crazy, but they'd got this bread knife with like a saw type bow, and the but what they were doing was they were doing a lot of demonstrations and making you cut the bread with this bread knife. And I tested it out. I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So I bought 3. Should do. One for me, one for my dad as a Christmas present, one for my brother-in-law as a Christmas present because I was stamped like, what'd you buy them? I bought a new dog collar. I'd been looking for a dog collar for my mini Dachshund, couldn't find one anywhere. And again, when I went to buy that collar from the lady at, I think it was Dogs and Co or something like that, she asked me what you're looking for in particular. And I said, I'm trying to find one that will fit a mini Dachshund. And she went straight away, oh yeah, I make them. And she pulled out this beautiful handmade leather one. And it was money straight in her hand. I did buy myself a pair of Fairfax and Faber boots, but only because I desperately wanted to try them on. And I've got really wide feet, probably too much information there. So I had to try those on. I bought a load of cheese. Again, I was tasting it. I bought gin, I bought wine. But those people that were selling those things, they interacted with me. They asked me, they asked questions, they asked about my favourites, they offered me trials. And I think that really matters when you're trying to sell some stuff. Sometimes you need a little bit of that. And for the service-based businesses, I will talk more about how I'm planning for the National Equine Show, and we'll talk about how I get on at the National Equine Show as well this year afterwards. I'm actually going to give you some real my experiences this year and talk about what I'm doing in terms of that. But I think it does come down to strategy so much. Okay, so back to our data. So the next question I asked was incredibly consistent. I asked, like, what did they think made people actually stop and get results, get those engagement things? So it kind of goes into our strategy. So out of everybody that I asked, they said the top result was eye-catching display. 65% said the display has to catch the eye. 30% said show-only deals. And I think especially with the London International, I find that is a buyer show. Like, you've got this big shopping area, you've got the actual show as well, but people do go to shop, and they go specifically about just before Christmas, so it gets those last minute Christmas things. So I think show only deals can help. Live demos or show me hows, 25% said that they thought that stopped people, and say was definitely my experience with what I bought. Conversation and education, 40% said that helped, and 35 said clear signage and offers. And I think this is so key. And I'll be talking through my strategy for my signage as well for the National Equine Show that I've got coming. So multiple exhibitors said versions of this. A lot of stands struggled because their stand design alone didn't do enough of a job of selling. And stand design does matter. Yeah. People weren't wandering. They were deciding fast whether they wanted to stop or rush by. And this sort of takes me back to some of my experiences before. I remember being at a specific show where there was a whole load of makeup ladies, and they were almost jumping on anybody walking past. And because everybody clocked these makeup ladies who were directly opposite me in my stand, they clocked them. People were genuinely rushing by to try and get away from them. So they didn't even look at what I was doing. They didn't want to hang around my stand because they didn't want to be accosted by these ladies that were trying to do makeup on them. And I think that's really key. It's like, how do you get that balance to do enough of the work? And I don't know what I'm trying to go with this one. Anyway, let's go back. So the biggest friction points. So this was probably the most emotional section of the survey. So the top frustrations. So at the bottom came the timing of the show. Now, the London International is probably one of the hardest shows, in my opinion, to do because it's literally on top of Christmas. It's a week-long show, 5 days. It's open from early till night. It's a really tough show. So lots of the timing was one of the biggest friction points. Then 30% said the hardest thing for them at this show was the staffing and the energy. And again, I say this was a huge show, like probably one of the biggest, say 5 days, long old days on the stands. Staffing and energy, they found that really tough. 35% footfall in their area was an issue. They didn't feel there was enough people walking round, which I thought was interesting. Every time that I walked round, it was good. But the thing about the London International is you have the show on as well. So often there's these quiet points, and then when everybody's not in the show, they just go into the shopping area, and the shopping area then just goes crazy, which actually means that sometimes at those high footfall times, people aren't stopping by because it gets busy in certain areas. 40% said people were browsing but not buying, and they found that quite tricky. And I can see why people would find that as a friction point and why that came up so high. I don't think it's true that people were not buying, but I went around and I spent a lot of money, but there was still 90% of my time I was just wondering. It doesn't mean that I wasn't buying. I just wasn't buying everything at once. I wanted to go out and check. And then 50% said the costs versus return. So that came up higher. So as I said, the cost of these stands is huge. You're not just factoring the price per square meter that you have to pay. You might also have to pay on top of that electric, staffing on the stand. You've got to pay for your food, your drink, your stay. You've got to pay for the travel there. There are so many overheads that these are really expensive. So it is a massive cost, and it sadly doesn't bring the return that people would like. It doesn't mean it's not worth it, but it just means that you don't always get the return, especially straight up, that you'd like. So one exhibitor summed this up perfectly. They said, shows aren't as lucrative as they used to be. Consumers are really feeling the pinch. Another said, it's too expensive, poor footfall. And several mentioned that performances pull crowds away from the shopping for long periods. And as I said, it is just the way that this show runs, that is to be expected. And I think if you're a new exhibitor, you need to be prepared for that, especially around the London International. So section 8. So I was talking about like the energy reality, and this came up again and again, especially around the London International. And I'm so not surprised, and even with clients that I know that have done the London International, energy is so important here. They are long days, very long days. And multiple people said things like it requires a lot of planning and a lot of energy. There's many hours with hardly anyone around, which, as I said, there is those when the show is on, it does get a lot quieter. So be prepared if you're going to do a show like the London International, be prepared for those long days and bouts of no customers, and plan around them. Take as many breaks as you possibly can, because this is not just a money decision, it's a stamina decision, and you need to know that you can actually keep that up and have a plan for it. Like I'm planning for the London Marathon at the moment, so I'm going to be running that in April. So I have to plan like my nutrition and my energy and how am I going to drink and how am I going to make sure that I can get the most out of me so that I can run that. And it's the same with the show. You need to plan it almost like it is a marathon and get yourself ready for it. So that means good sleep, good food, all of those things really, really matter. So now we're down to like the nitty gritty of this survey. So of course I asked them, would they do it again? Would they do it again? And despite everything that we've said, 70% said yes. 70% said they would 100% do it again. 15% said maybe. 15% said not sure yet. but 0% said a flat no. Now, that tells you something really important. So it says even when sales are lower, many still felt that it was worth it for visibility, for learning, and for future payoff. But almost everybody added a condition. Quotes like that they were saying were things like, yes, but it depends on your goal. It's hard work, but it's worth it. Another one said, ask me after my second show. It's a learning curve. And I think this is the thing. If you're going to take shows on, they are an investment. So allow them to be a longer term investment and think, I'm going to do one, I'm going to do another, I'm going to do another. Each time we do them, they get better and better. As I'm planning my show this year for the National Equine Show, and I did it for the first time last year with the Equestrian Business Support Network, I'm doing it again this year, my stand has elevated up. And that's how we do it. This is about stacking and growing and learning through this. So what do I want you to take from all this data? So here is the point of this episode. The London International Horse Show is not good or bad for you, right? It's not a guaranteed win and it's not a guaranteed disaster. What does make the difference is having a strategy and a plan. So it's knowing what success looks like before you go. Understand that sales might not happen instantly. Planning for energy, staffing, and recovery. Designing a stand that sells without you speaking. Accepting that cost versus return is not just about cash. And most importantly, asking yourself, is this the right show for this version of my business this year now? So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it useful. If you've exhibited at London or another big equine show and you want to add your experience, I do genuinely want to hear it. Add it to the comments, leave me a comment, send me a message. I do care. I do want to hear it. And I think it's a great way of helping others, especially in this industry, to know what it's truly like. And if you're considering a show and you want to talk it through without some pressure, you're always welcome to come into the Equestrian Business Support Network, ask there, or book a little call with me. You can do that on my website at the Equine Business Mentor, because guessing is going to be an expensive decision to make, and good decisions are always based on the data. So if you would like to see me, or if you want me to put this in a full downloadable resource where you can actually see the data, send me a message and just say, can I have some screenshots of your data so I can actually look at them in a bit more detail, and I'll send them to you. Find me on Instagram at the Equine Business Mentor. Right, and for now, I will see you soon. Have a great day.